Doctors, nurses, and hospital staff over it. What are your experiences? Funny, sad, horrible, with people waking from anesthesia? NSW. Was the patient in this one. When I was 12 I had heart surgery and was getting wheeled down to the operating room. I was completely transfixed on my knee when I then asked a nurse if I could pet the kitty. She said sure, so I started petting and scratching my knee going AWW, good kitty kitty. When I woke up from that surgery I spent about 5 days in anesthetic, heck, like a medically induced coma but not quite as severe, and cussed out every nurse that asked me how I was doing. I was intubated, so I had to scratch out my hatred onto scrap paper and hope they could translate it. When I was off of the cocktail they were giving me I was back to my cheerful self and felt mortified about calling the pretty nurses working the ICU ward at Children's Hospital a bunch of stupid c. Apparently it happens all the time, but I still cringe when I think about it. As an EMT who deals with the nurses at Children's, that might explain some of their surliness. 3 times. The first time when I was 5, tonsil surgery. My family is from Norway, and my grandmother always kept a pewter model of a longboat on her mantle. Just to explain why a 5-year-old would wake up screaming, "Get me back to the longboat," and then apparently, to quote my mother, go all Linda Blair on the doctors when they came in to try to give me antibiotics. That was nearly 25 years ago and my family still likes to joke about me managing to shriek my head off and throw punches after having just come out of throat surgery. By age 13, I'd tamed down some, and apparently only muttered angrily at everyone while waking up. Age 26, all the fight had gone out of me, and I just cried whenever a nurse asked me a question. "How is your pain? Not bad. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Can you sit up for me?" Uncontrollable sobbing. "Okay then, let's get you some apple juice." Fully disconsolate. Got my wisdom teeth out 2 weeks ago and all I could do was cry. I tried sitting there focusing on not crying, but every time my dad looked at me I started to bawl, and when the doctor asked me how I was doing I burst into tears and laughed at the same time. In 91 I had my appendix out, but there was a complication. Instead of being inflamed and ready to burst, they found my appendix dead and shriveled. The poison in my appendix had drained to my lymph nodes in the center of my stomach. The doctor doing the surgery had to feel around to find where to make the second incision. Problem is that I was in the operating room for so long I built up a tolerance to the anesthesia that I woke up. As I started to sit up with 2 huge holes in my stomach, all hands came out of me and a nurse forced my head down, making me look at the ceiling. I thought this was a dream from the meds they gave me, but my doctor later confirmed that this actually happened. The anesthesiologist decided to up the dosage on the anesthesia to an adult level, then double an adult level, and I finally fell back asleep. Because of the high dosage they gave me, my arms and legs twitched and I almost turned over on my side with 2 huge holes in my stomach. They had to grab straps and strap me down to the bed, including my head. I do not remember it, but the doctor, who was my family doctor until the day he died, told me that I woke up 3 more times during the operation, and one time I saw my open wounds and freaked the heck out. After that they strapped my head to the table. The anesthesiologist refused to give me any larger dosages of the meds because he was at the danger levels for an adult. I was a child and it was not working on me. Ever since then I have had to be prescribed large dosages of anything or it will not work. Dental work has to be done with both a local and gas as well. Because of this, with the exception of heartburn meds and antibiotics, medicine is something I usually do not take because it does not work on me well unless I take illegal doses. My 11-year-old daughter woke up crying after foot surgery because she felt bad for Luigi. When I asked her why, she said because no one ever wants to be him when they play. I have a nice sister of a friend story. She was getting her wisdom teeth removed, and after they took them out, they just sewed up the holes they were in. Now, she came out of anesthesia, but she was still groggy and like, super high. While they were in the car going home, she reached into her mouth, touched the stumps and got blood on her fingers, and then reached up and gave her the double football stripe look, pulled her blanket over her head, and said, "I'm a warrior." The friend who told me this was laughing for a good 5 minutes after she told me this. Just thought I might share. My brother had knee surgery done, and at the time was running his own business and was stressed out. When he was coming off the anesthesia, he was trying to get out of bed and demanding to let him go because he had to get back to work. It took 3 nurses to hold him down to convince him to stay in bed. The sad and funny thing is, he remembered the whole thing, but he said it was like he felt he couldn't stop himself. Needless to say, he was really embarrassed the rest of his hospital stay. I'm not the medical professional in this story. My husband had emergency surgery a few years ago, and when he woke up, he was just different. I can't explain it. He recognized who I was, but his personality was completely different and the way he spoke to me was completely different. It's sort of like in movies where people wake up in someone else's body. It freaked me the frick out. 36 hours later, it was like he just woke up and was himself again. The weird part is, he had no memory of the past 36 hours. He remembers being sick and he remembers the emergency room, but after that, nothing. A lot of people came to visit him in that time period too. A bunch of family and everyone from the office, and he has no memory of any of them. The only thing I can think is that whatever medication that was used in the anesthesia that gawked him finally worked its way out of his system. Thank you for the new verb, to gawk. I had an endoscopy performed and was put into a twilight sedation. When I woke up, I barely remember sitting in the recovery area. I heard the beeping from my monitor. I started to shake, and my wife freaked out and called in the nurses thinking I was having some type of seizure or something. I was just trying to make the beeping go faster by shaking. While on fentanyl for gallstones in the ear, I asked the ultrasound tech if she wanted to take a selfie with me. She declined and I got butthurt about it. Apparently I also told my sweet grandmother, when asked if I was okay, that I was fine gran. I'm high as giraffe balls. 2011 I had a hernia surgery. Don't remember this but was told I woke up exclaiming how fked up I was. Wanted to know what they had given me and if I could purchase some. I'm a nurse on a post-op floor and this type of comment is pretty common. I had my wisdom teeth removed about a month ago and apparently when I woke up I said wowie. That's some good crap. I was coming around from surgery and the nurse who was looking after me had a crush on a guy I dated when I first started nursing, several years before. It was rather surreal to go from deep sleep to talking about an ex-boyfriend I had hardly thought about in years. I almost feel it was an abuse of her power. I could have said anything coming out. You don't expect to be interrogated about a past relationship the first thing waking up from major surgery. In the end I found out some gossip. The relationship didn't last long and apparently he was hurt that I wasn't devastated when we broke up and that I started dating someone new within a few weeks. Slightly different in that it wasn't anesthesia, but rather sedative meds. I worked in a hospital years ago, and once had a patient who had an extreme paradoxical reaction, opposite of what is expected, to her Ambien. She went off the rails. She started hallucinating that she was in a hostage situation with a man who was killing babies. One nurse went in the middle of the night while doing her rounds and the patient attacked her with a folded wire hanger and severely beat her in the face and head. The nurse ended up with multiple broken bones in her face, blacked both eyes, and a number of deep wounds on her face. She was gone for a while on workman's comp but eventually quit, stating the experience had traumatized her and she didn't want to be in the building again. Don't know whatever happened to the patient but I doubt she would have been punished or charged, since she was not in her right state of mind and nobody expected such a reaction to the medicine. I was just going under and was barely conscious but my mother asked me how many fingers am I holding, so I replied by lifting my middle finger and saying no mom, how many fingers am I holding up? I woke up from knee surgery and demanded a vodka and coke with no ice. Also for some reason when I woke up I was freezing cold and shivering. One of the nurses hooked me up to some heater which blew warm air under the covers from the bottom of the bed. I then likened myself to Marilyn Monroe. I'm a 6'2" athletic guy. Heater which blew warm air under the covers from the bottom of the bed. What a fancy hospital. Got wisdom teeth out 1 month after my dad died. Woke up and asked where he was. Thought he was picking me up. My mom had a rough time with that one. Crap man. My surgeon told me that when I was waking up from anesthesia, he was walking past my bed and I yelled out as loud as I could, "Thanks for not killing me, doctor." Smith, name changed. He later told me it really made his day and he'll never forget it. I'd like to seize this chance to say sorry to that poor guy who was around when I woke up. First thing I said was, I got a puke and I did so generously while he helped me suffer through this. Then I looked at him and said, "What's your name?" I don't know what he answered, because he reminded me of a friend of my sister. So I told him, "Well, you look more like a Tobias to me." He laughed and said that I look like a Hugo to him then. My dizzy mind then thought it was nice to say, "So does your mom." Then I laughed and puked again. I fell asleep soon after and another nurse was there when they brought me back to my room, so I never got the chance to apologize. While it's a good story, I still feel a little embarrassed. Can just hope that guy has seen worse. If I was that dude, I would chuckle for years to come. We had a cute little guy, 6YO, who was getting his arm set in emerg after a pretty big playground full. He'd been waiting patiently for about 3 hours, was a super trooper all through the x-rays, the IV, and while we get him set up on monitors, they were talking about how he wouldn't remember the doctors putting his bones back in place because of the meds and how he'd probably have funny dreams from them too, so he should think of something good right before we gave them. Having taken care of him all shift, and knowing how hungry this kid was, he was restricted from eating till he was in the cast. I said, "You like hamburgers, right? Maybe mom and dad can take you to McDonald's when you're done as a treat." The dad was like, "Yeah, cool buddy, we'll do that. Just get this all done first." So we push the special K and the kid conks out. The is a bit difficult. It was radial ulnar snap a couple inches below the wrist. Big fush from a height almost an S shape. He was only out for about 10-15 minutes and came awake after that but was still partly under for a good while. The mom and dad were rubbing his shoulders getting ready to go as soon as he was up and able. When they asked him if he had any dreams he said kind of drunkenly, "Hamburgers dancing." It's much cuter when said by a heroic sleepy 6-year-old. Not at hospital staff, but my grandma recently had to get anesthesia. When she woke up she went paranoid and thought that the doctors and nurses wanted to kill her to harvest her organs. We had to try to explain to her that at her age, there wasn't much that would be worth it. Many elderly people, especially those with a baseline of dementia, have adverse reactions to anesthesia. They are frequently cookie for a few days. Also, interestingly enough, they can still harvest organs from the elderly. The LifeLink rep at my hospital says she has had some organs taken from people as old as 90. Got told the story. When I was 8, I got a knee surgery. While on anesthesia, the travel between my hospital room and the ER tough. I was in a Formula 1 car, so I would make all the noise, telling people to faster, make the sound of the tires too. The guys told my mom it was the funniest transfer they ever had. Everybody was laughing, including people in the hallway. Obligatory, not a doctor, but I've gotten anesthesia a bunch of times. I only have vague memories of waking up from it, but I imagine the nurse's favorite from me is the time that I convinced my nurse that I spoke Russian and could help her translate the one phrase she knew. In reality, I had taken like 2 semesters of Russian, but still had a very limited vocab. I still wanted to get my flirt game on though. The only thing I could think of as the patient was that I surprised a lot of nurses with how quickly I shook off the anesthetic. I would be walking around an hour later and getting changed ready to go home. They just look dumbfounded. I am one of those people as well. I wake up quite easily like I'd just had a nap or something. I'm also quite difficult to put out and hard to keep under. I don't fight it or resist it. It's like my body just shrugs it off. I shadowed a surgery once with this guy who woke up saying, "Give it to me straight, doc. Will I ever play the piano again?" All of us were cracking up and he then goes, "Oh, wait, I don't know how to play the piano." Ha 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 ha, this one made me laugh. Woke up from a 2-hour reconstructive surgery on my ear. They had removed most of the skin between my ear and my head, opened it like a door and built me a new eardrum. As soon as I woke up, I had to clean. So I started walking around the ward in my assless gown, trailing an IV, and looking for stuff to throw away. Nurse was not amused, but I refused to stop cleaning. She gave me a piece of paper and told me to throw this away then go back to bed. I agreed. Also, what's with everyone being put under for wisdom teeth removal? I had mine yanked. Then I drove home 15 minutes later. A lot of times, doctors will try to pull wisdom teeth early, before they cause too much impaction. If they haven't broken the gum surface yet, it's a pretty involved oral surgery that can take a long time. Also, some people are wimps. This will get buried, but I feel compelled to share anyways. I went in to get all 4 of my wisdom teeth pulled, and they used light anesthesia on me because I did not want to be awake in any way. The first thing I remember when I came out was my girlfriend at the time, and 3 nurses laughing hysterically. I didn't know what was going on. They kept saying to me, "Sing us your song. Sing us the song." And I kept asking what song. My girlfriend says, "They told me all about the body condom midget lover song you kept singing. I want to hear." Supposedly when I first woke up, they asked who had brought me in for the surgery. "You aren't allowed to drive away after anesthesia done." And I responded something to the effect of, "My midget." They couldn't believe it, but I was adamant that my midget had brought me. I then began to sing a song called Body Condom Midget Lover, which I don't remember a single word of. So one nurse went out into the waiting room and started looking for a little person. Of course there was no little person, so they just asked, "Who brought Madison for surgery?" I guess they were shocked when a normal woman walked up and said, "Me." Unfortunately, I still can't remember that song, but I hope all those nurses never forgot it. TLDR woke up from anesthesia telling the nurses a midget brought me for surgery, and proceeded to sing a song Body Condom Midget Lover, which I never sang before. I had ingrown canines. They were basically growing sideways in the roof of my mouth. Anyways, once I woke up, my wife, who was then my girlfriend, had to leave the dentist office to go to the bathroom or something before we left. Anyways, when she was leaving, I started singing Baby Come Back. I did this with a hole in the roof of my mouth where they were trying to pull my canines out through 2 missing baby canines which were just removed, and under a crap ton of anesthesia while my mouth was filled with blood. So, needless to say, I had quite the lisp. She said it was both the cutest and scariest thing I had ever done. I was the patient in this one, but I was having a squint corrected by surgery when I was 5. They gave me anesthesia, but it just made me more and more hyper. I was bouncing around the little cot they'd put me in as the doctor said to my mum, "I don't understand. He should be going to sleep." The bit I remember clear as day was when, with my surgery window about to close, they switched drugs and pinned me down with a mask on. In my memory it is super violent and traumatic. I'm sure it wasn't, but they were wearing masks and I was a kid and basically became terrified of doctors for a while. A lot of sedatives and anesthetics have the complete opposite effect when given to kids. They get hyper and excited rather than sleepy. I had an appendectomy when I was 17, 1987. When I woke up after surgery, I was singing Wild Thing very loudly, but I was still under a bit, so I hadn't tried to open my eyes or sit up. When I finally did wake up, I couldn't see at all. I was screaming, "I'm blind. I can't see." And my mom and dad were in the room with me thinking I was indeed blind from the anesthesia. The doctor eventually came in and explained that this happens sometimes and it can take a bit for eyesight to return. It took 30 minutes and the entire time I really thought I was never going to see again. Then to make matters worse, I was in horrible pain and the nurse said, "We will get you a shot really quick." While giving me the shot, I started to speak and then the Demerol hit me and I threw up everywhere. I was home after having my wisdom teeth removed and I asked my dad for a bottle of water. I still had the gauze in my mouth, so I couldn't close my mouth all the way to swallow. So of course, water dribbled down my chin. The water was red from the blood, but my drug-induced mind thought, "Oh my gosh, I just drank water and it came out red like wine. Wine like Jesus. I'm Jesus, yeah." My very religious father didn't take this too well, lol. Who also had the 3 heart monitor patches on me still, and when I felt them, they were pointy. So again, my drug-induced mind thought, where did these extra nipples come from? Oh crap, I have 5 nipples now. Patient here. Had to be gassed when I got my wisdom teeth removed. Apparently my jaw needed some kinda jiggering, so they doped me really well. Luckily my wife was there to keep contained. When I came out of surgery, I apparently called the nurses cold bags, probably for being rude. and tried to cheer them up by singing the Adventure Time theme song with a mouthful of gauze and blood. This is assumption by the way, as my wife had to fill in the gaps in my memory, but what followed kinda confirms things. The nurses, fed up with my attempts to soothe them, told me to pipe down and handed me a whiteboard with a marker. This is how I was meant to talk for the next while. I took some artistic liberties and drew my best Jake and Finn for them and kept trying to stop the nurses as they rushed past me so I could show them my drawing. Nobody stopped, so I sat there weeping and smiling, unsure what I was supposed to feel. I was quite a sight. A 6-foot-tall heavily tattooed child smiling and crying like a doofus in his wheelchair, hoping the nurses he insulted would be proud of his artwork. I did a 3-day internship at a vet in 8th grade, and I got to watch them operate, mostly castration neutering, and one time they brought in a wildcat, like a European one, so it looked just like a house cat with weird markings. It was oddly tame, and let me touch it. It also had only 3 legs. The last one had got stuck in a trap, and was in for some infection, had gotten stuck in another trap, so we got the needles ready, well, the vet did, and it was fine. Until the vet injected it. It must have hated needles, because it started literally running as Cyril's ABD hissing. They got it in a net eventually, but it still wouldn't calm down. They doubled the dose, then tripled it. Finally it nodded off, but still kept waking up very so often to glare at us. After the operation it went back to being nearly tame, let me pet it, gave me a nuzzle and was released the next day. Late to the party, but when I got my wisdom teeth out, I managed to get 2 people in the recovery room to sing Christmas carols with me. I also argued with the nurse about my singing. In my defense, it was the 26th of December. Code browns are pretty common. Patients crapping themselves during anesthesia or on emergence. One of my patients who was in lithotomy position for a gyn procedure, vulvectomy, started wiggling a bit. The surgeon was positioned between the patient's legs, putting a wound vac on, and was almost done, so I had turned off the anesthetic. Well, she ended up squirting a dark brown streak of poop up the surgeon's gown and up her mask. Surgeon was less that pleased. I told her that she should have finished up faster and that I was sorry, but I ran out of quarters for the anesthesia machine. Older female patient was sedated and we were just starting her colonoscopy. As the surgeon began putting the scope in her bum, she sleepily swatted her hand towards her behind and said, "Not now, John." We all just looked at each other and started cracking up. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.